Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Eleanor Barrett. I'm the Deputy Director of the American Law Institute, or as many people have said to me, the new Stephanie Middleton. I certainly don't purport to replace Stephanie, but I do aspire to live up to the high example that she set for service as Deputy Director of this wonderful organization. And I want to thank everyone for their warm welcome. And also just to say to our newer members who we're honoring here today, that I am available to you. I would love for you to be in touch with me. I'd love to meet as many of you as possible as I can during this week's meeting. It's so terrific to have you all here. And I'm a resource for you at any time. If you have questions about our projects, about how we do our work, about issues with the projects, you can always come to me. Please email me, call me. Either way, I really, really look forward to meeting with and working with so many of you who I haven't had a chance to meet with already. Today's lunch honors our new members. So in addition to being like the chairman of the Hair Club for Men, I'm not just the deputy director, I'm also a new member. I have my green cord on. And so at this time, I'd really like to honor our class of 2022 new members. If you could please stand. Thank you so much for being here with us today. We really look forward to working with you, and we hope that you'll get involved in our work. We really need your time and your talent to be able to do what we do here at the American Law Institute. Now, without further ado, our program for today involves conversation with our wonderful leadership. So I'm going to turn the floor over to David and Diane, who will talk to you, or David, I think, will interview Diane about the future of the American Law Institute and Diane's journey here. Thanks.
There you are.
Right here.
Well, I promised everybody this morning that there would be champagne, you have iced tea, and fireworks, and we had some fireworks. It turns out, you know, they say in Washington that the most precious thing is Senate time. The most precious thing in the ALI is annual meeting time. And do you have any reflections on this morning?
Well, look, it was no secret that this was going to be, a very serious discussion, I'll say. I was debating, should I call it a passionate discussion? Should I call it pointed? But actually, in the ALI's best tradition, there were 9 motions on this project. That's a lot. And they weren't just, put a comma here or a semicolon there. They were very serious, substantive motions that raised fundamental questions about the project. And so my first reaction was very positive. It was a clear decision to make sure that we used as much time as we needed to talk about John Beisner's motion. There were a lot of people in the room who thought that he had made some very good points, many other people in the room who saw it differently. But the tone of the discussion, I thought, was typical ALI. People were giving reasons for what their concerns were, where they thought there might be ambiguities. And those reasons were, in turn, weighed by some people who didn't ever approach a microphone, but you could see them thinking about it. And that's the world we live in. The fact is, there are plenty of issues that I'm sure every person in this room could think of that are somewhat polarizing, somewhat divisive. And the question isn't, what do you do about it? They're there, but you shouldn't be afraid of it. And the ALI has just such a great record of creating a positive place to resolve those. So I thought that's what happened.
I totally agree. Since we've both been judges, we're process people. And, in addition to making good decisions, we like to see the ALI make good decisions, but we are both very committed that everybody gets to be heard, and that at the end of the day, people say, it was a fair debate. Nobody tried to shut it down or slant it in some way or another. So that was all good. So I'm sure I speak for everybody here. We're just so delighted you're our new director And
Thank you.
aside from whatever advocacy I may have worked upon you, why did you decide to become the new director of the ALI? You were doing pretty well there in Chicago.
Let's start with part one, David Levy's advocacy. I didn't actually count the number of times I had phone conversations with David about this possibility, but he knew that I was a little vulnerable on this point. I had just taken senior status on the Seventh Circuit, which I did last September, and I didn't have any big plan. I really thought I was just going to continue as usual, hearing cases, doing my teaching at the University of Chicago, and possibly seeing grandchildren a little more than I had been, but I wasn't expecting to change much. But then all of a sudden there's Ricky about to go to OIRA, and the ALI needed a new director. And one of the things I've always loved about being a federal judge is the fact that you are a total generalist. I feel in some ways this is me never being able to grow up. I can't settle in on this topic as my specialty or that, because something else comes along and I think, oh, that sounds really interesting too. Maybe I better take a look at it. And that's the ALI in a nutshell. The ALI touches on everything. It began, of course, with this common law focus, but you all know that the US legal system has become much more hybrid. In some areas, more common law, in other areas, more statutory. But American judges, I think, kind of have that common law gene inside their brains that you respect precedent and you develop law a case at a time. And the thought of being involved in the very many fascinating projects that the ALI was doing from this central point was really attractive to me.
So for the benefit of the new members who may not know, can you describe the role of director as you see it?
Well, I have, in the years I have been active in the ALI, I have known several directors. Jeff Hazard had already finished being director by the time I was particularly engaged, but he was very much an active member of the council, leading projects, very much in the game. So I count him. Lance Liebman was director when I joined, and I knew Lance and had the opportunity to work with him. Then Lance was followed by Ricky, and as I was recounting last night to Ricky and some others, I was at that point chair of the nominating committee, so I was responsible largely for putting Ricky's name forward to people, and everybody said, oh, great, and here we are 9 years later. So I have different models, and they've all done different things. I think keeping the process running is very important to me. Being involved with the project is. Jeff had a reputation, though, of really in a very granular way, looking over each project. I'm not sure that there's time to do that. Maybe there will be when I'm not trying to, as I say, do 3 half-time jobs, which is what I'm doing at the moment. But in another year, I will have wrapped up the judgeship and will be just half-time, supposedly half-time. I guess it'll be 2 3/4-time jobs at that point, but we'll see. But my sense is that staying on top of the substance is very important. Making sure the members are engaged and involved is something I look forward to very much, because I think with the deputy director, everything would be impossible without Eleanor, but with the deputy director, you have a great chance to involve people too.
Eleanor does do such a great job and runs the Philadelphia operation, I think it's fair to say. It frees you up to work with the reporters and the council and that sort of thing. So we often say that ALI members should leave their clients at the door. And I think that applies to judges too, even though they don't actually have clients. But what do we mean by that?
Well, the ideal is that you come in and consider whether it's the restatement of torts, miscellaneous medical monitoring, or property provisions or whatever. You apply your own expertise, but you're not trying to skew the law in some way that's going to allow you to win the next 3 cases you have in court. That you are doing a little more of what a judge ought to be doing, actually, which is just trying to figure out what's the right rule. And as one of my former colleagues in the Seventh Circuit used to say, in some ways, this is always a creative process, because if the rule really were all that clear, none of us would be bothering to talk about it. I mean, we are trying to figure out what to do in those ambiguous areas, those areas that haven't been treated yet. And I think the leave the client at the door ideal means that you don't bring economic self-interest or other things into the table. It's very hard, because at the same time, we bring people into the Institute who are outstanding members of the legal profession, whether they're law professors or they're practitioners or they're government people or they're academic, whatever. And they benefit from their experience. If you've spent your whole life representing, insurance companies on the side of the insured, you're going to just have experience. It's going to make you understand those arguments. And I don't think anybody should feel that they're violating the take the client out of it norm if they just happen to have an informed perspective.
What we don't want is for, it's absolutely verboten, just so everybody knows, it's forbidden to advocate and take a fee for advocating as a member of the ALI. And we don't want our members to come under pressure either from clients, but everybody does have a point of view, which is why we value so much range, geographic, practice area, diversity. We're really looking for different points of view in the Institute, and it is okay to rely on personal experience and
Absolutely.
personal knowledge. So that
Absolutely.
and one learns a lot over the course of time. Well, as we look forward, what do you see as like the big challenges for the ALI, and what are like the big opportunities?
I think the big challenges are going to have a lot to do with how we engage in the newer technologies that are descending upon us like a tsunami, practically every day. We're going to have a program on AI, and I remember I was at an event just this past New Year's Eve where somebody was making fun of ChatGPT, and I confess I had never heard of it at that point. And it's just everywhere. David made up a sonnet with it, I discovered. And I'm suddenly worrying about, what about papers that my students have turned into me at the University of Chicago? I would never use ChatGPT myself to write an opinion, because I want to keep control of, what I'm talking about with the facts and the law. But that's probably just me. I don't know to what extent it's going to be a tool, to what extent it's going to be a substitute. These are very actively debated points, and they're going to touch on so many parts of the law. They're going to touch on contract law. They're going to touch on torts and property. There likely are going to be statutory regimes that will need to be coordinated. So I think that's just one example. Other examples, again, I think maybe as we go forward, we're going to have to be sure we understand what kind of problem our particular process and our particular expertise can really help, and what sort of things are just as well done by others, by some industry group. Because for us, not everything lends itself to the format of a black letter statement and then an explication and comments with illustrations, and then a more detailed set of reporter notes. It's a great format. It works for a lot of things, but it's probably not right for everything. And I'll actually give you an example of an ALI project that didn't wind up taking that format. Some years back, actually probably 15 years ago, we had a 3-year run of studies done on the law of the appellate body of the World Trade Organization. And it was, each case was looked at by a lawyer and by an economist, because we're trying to see, what is this law? How is it developing? Is it making any sense? And so 3 very interesting reports were written about this. But this was as far from a black letter, et cetera, format as you could get. And we haven't repeated that much, but occasionally the ALI has done studies. They did a very famous study in 1969 on the study on the division of jurisdiction between state and federal courts, which apparently I found out from the law library. The last time somebody checked this book out, it was you. So I appear to be the only person who's looking at it. It's a bit outdated, but anyway, the question is that kind of project something we might want to think a little more
I was
of?
an advisor on that project. That was the Federal Judicial Code, right?
There was a later one in 1990 that you probably were involved in.
Yeah. And that was a great experience. John Oakley was the reporter from UC Davis, and both Jeff and Charles Allen Wright were deeply involved.
Oh.
And so they were both doing their thing. Charles Allen Wright would be up there, and he would cite to the page and paragraph. It's absolutely unbelievable. I see Wallace shaking his head. Nobody had the book right there, and I think it was a little bit before we could kind of like just call it up instantly on an iPad, because I don't think we had an iPad in 1990.
No, we did
but
not.
I did believe that he had the citation right, and he certainly believed it. And he also liked to have a drink or two at lunch, and he said things would become a lot clearer in the afternoon as a result, and they frequently did. Jeff Hazard, on the other hand, had this habit of pretending to be asleep, but he was really just pretending, although you weren't absolutely certain. And then he would wake up and kind of reformulate everything that had happened. Okay, so let us put ourselves in the position of a new member. What advice would you have to a new member to kind of knit themselves into the Institute?
Well, the first thing I would do is go to the website and look at the projects tab, because the projects tab will tell you not just what's being worked on right now, but what some of the more recent things have been, because that's the lifeblood of our institute. That's what we do. That's why it's not just sort of a little certificate that you can put on your wall and be done with it. We are, in fact, trying to improve the law. We are trying to make laws clear and sensible for people to follow, as David and I have said both. Probably it's a rule of law mission, and lest we think that the rule of law is a problem only faced by other countries, I will invite you to say that it's important for every country, us included, and it needs our work, as some of our more recent projects have shown, whether it's on the Electoral Count Act, or whether it's on government ethics, or whether it's on principles of policing. All of these things, in one way or the other, go back to that. So look at those projects, see which ones tweak your interest. And it doesn't have to be something in an area that you've spent the last 15 years of your life working in. It's fine if you're relatively new to it. A fresh perspective, a fresh comment on things is exactly what we need a lot of the time. We want to get away from just the little professional niches that people have had and get people to say, no, this is for everybody. This is for all those generalist judges, but this is for society. So you may find some, and if it's an ongoing project, you always have the opportunity right away to join the members' consultative group. It's been one of our great innovations in the last whatever number of years. It's been a while since we've had them, but they're becoming more effective, and they're becoming more effective right now, in part because of COVID. And you probably didn't think there was anything good to say about COVID, and there is very little good to say about it. But this is a good thing. It pushed us into taking much more seriously the possibilities of remote activities, whether it's access to things, whether it's participation in certain meetings. all of us, myself, or at least I'll speak only for myself. I love being here in this room with you. I love being with actual people. But to be honest, day to day, we're all busy. And if you're in a members consultative group and there's a project meeting and you think, you know, I don't have the time to fly all the way to Philadelphia to go to this meeting, but, you know, I could sit at my desk from 9 in the morning until 1 in the afternoon and participate in the discussion of whatever the project is you've decided to follow. And we're getting better at making sure those discussions include the people on the remote feed, normally it's Zoom, I think, but it could be anything. And I think it's been a very inclusive tool. And the other great thing is if you do join MCG, people will notice you. Eleanor will follow you. You know, she'll have your name and, you know, email committed to memory. And there will be other projects, and you'll be understood as somebody who's really willing to give us that much of your time. So that's the first opportunity. MCG, great. Advisor, you know, is something that we pick at the ALI when we have a new project. There's always a flow of new projects. So the other thing you might do after you look at that project list is think, you know, I know an area that I don't see here. And you might look and see the way it's been developed. We can only accommodate a certain number of projects at a time, so I can't really sit here and promise you that if you flood us with proposals for new projects, they'll all happen, or at least they'll all happen right away. But we might get 3 or 4 different proposals, and they may all circle around the same thing. And that will tell us something. It will also tell us about who the right people to look at it would be. So that would get you into the core of the work. Now, obviously, you know, there are many other things about the ALI as well. Coming to the annual meeting is great. You know, I'm so glad that you're all here. Next year it's going to be in San Francisco, right?
That is true.
So, City by the Bay, but it's always just an intellectual feast of different topics to discuss instead of a singular project meeting. Of course, you've seen for this meeting, which is actually a little shorter on these things because we have all these amazing special programs. But coming to the annual meeting counts, projects count, a lot of things count.
Well, that's great advice. Thank you so much, Diane, for being our new director. We're all going to learn a lot from you and just enjoy your company. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you. Thank you all.
So looking out at all of you, I just want to thank all of our new members and our old members too for being here. To the new members, don't hesitate to participate. I'm sure you won't. You know, we don't have assistant new members and associate new members and then tenured new members. This is not a hierarchical organization at all. You'll notice that people don't generally give their titles when they go to the microphone because that's not our thing. You go up and you say, Levi, New Mexico, or Wood, Illinois, and that's because, you know, that we want everybody to focus on the arguments and not the stature of the person, although this person...
It's not titles and not institutional affiliations either.
Right.
You know, you would never say, you know, Wood, 7th Circuit, you know, or whatever.
Or we say ALI class of, you know, whatever. So
No.
in other words, you're good to go.
Yeah.
And we hope you will. We want you to join in. We thrive on the energy of our membership and our new members. And you're here, you belong here, and we want to hear you. So thank you very much.
And we have a wonderful afternoon plan, so you'll finish your lunches.
I think we got to move it along. Eleanor, how long do we have? When do we need to go? 1:45. They're starting in the other building. So, you know.
Plenty of time. You have 13 minutes.
13 minutes.
To get over there.
But I think we'll just say, let's finish up and we'll get back over there. Good.
Absolutely. Thank you, David.
Thanks.